I don't believe trade is the main driver of that, but I'll grant that it does happen sometimes.
Who cares about bringing in money? Okay, the whole idea of running like a business.
I don't really think it's something that you should take. I don't know.
The argument against charging people rent?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, typically the philosophical argument
So, that's a legitimate criticism, because, I mean, you look at why USA was even invented.
So, I don't know. Like, I think a recurring theme or a recurring trend is that
less and less government. I want personal responsibility. I want personal accountability.
say that I'm like left and liberal. I don't identify like a communist or any of this stuff. Probably like a why would that be revelatory to know that water boils in?
About people who are diplomats or ambassadors from other.
Did I say that? Did I say that it was theoretically possible to include like it increase?
Natural society is a society where it's survival of.
You can. What you're describing, you can't do. It's, first of all, not what I'm talking about. Second of all, you can't.
So basically, like, even your Lord and Savior Donald Trump didn't do the best job.
That nature, you refer to it as being conscious, or the conscious community.
So I think that gay marriage at the constitutional and the Supreme Court level actually.
No, but my man just is in the building.
And I find it very interesting that fellow believers are.
Sure, there are examples, but these are minor examples compared to the ones that I'm giving. I'm talking about two.
It's unconstitutional, they shouldn't do it. But now they're arguing about, well, if they do it.
This video is a little blonde hair. Yeah, that's what your mom said last night too.
Let's ignore USAID. That's obviously upsetting you, and I get that because
no, it's not upsetting me.
There's a reason I'm successful. There's a reason why I'm liked.
This is exactly why Democrats.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I am Sarah, the Raging Tomato, bringing to you live another Throwdown Thursday. And my willing victim, guest, or Israel Horowitz, is here to talk about the concept that Jesus is not God. Now, I know 110% I have a lot of Christians in my community. I even have a lot of atheists in the community as well. So I would definitely be interested to have a lot of you joining us during open panel, which will kick off in about an hour. Rabbi Israel, I apologize, is actually dual streaming. So if you'd like to go send some love, share, like, subscribe over to him, please feel free to do so and welcome him to our Mater Nation properly. Sharing is caring. Israel, you've laid the claim. Jesus is not God. First and foremost, tell us about you and then give us kind of a rundown of why this claim. It's an interesting one, but an old one.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate your channel and what you do. Obviously, we live in a time where people need to get all this out in the open. We need to just have these conversations, talk about it all. So let's do it. I come from an ultra-Orthodox Jewish background. So I was raised ultra-Orthodox by what Christians would call the Pharisees. And I want to point out something clearly before I even get into my claim about Jesus not being God, which is that I am not your typical Jew. I'm not a Talmud believing Jew. I don't believe in the Talmud. I'm not a Zionist Jew. I'm not a secular Jew. I'm not an Orthodox Jew. What I call myself is a Torah-only Jew, or a Torah-only Israelite, rather. Okay. Because even the term Jew has been co-opted. It's not really the biblical term. The term is Israelite. And the way that I understand the meaning of an Israelite, and I'd like to say it's not my own understanding, it's actually what it says in the Bible. The meaning of an Israelite is someone who is part of the covenant of Yahweh. Yahweh is the name of God that's used thousands of times in the Old Testament. Yahweh, Yehovah, it's pronounced in Hebrew. That is the God of the Bible. That is the Father of Jesus, as he's referenced in the New Testament. So when I realized that the understanding of Judaism really is wrong, and the meaning of being part of the covenant is to follow the law, follow the Torah. That's written in the 5 books of Moses. And anytime you pick up any Bible, you're going to start from the beginning. It's going to be the book of Genesis. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Those are the 5 books of Moses. That's the law. That's where you find all the explanations on how to live, the original history of humanity. And that's what gives us the prescription on how to live. That's where the 10 Commandments appear, by the way, for example. Or, for example, when Jesus said, love your fellow as yourself, and love your God with all your heart, soul, and resources. Those are direct quotes from the Torah, from the 5 books of Moses. Love your fellow as yourself is Leviticus 19:18, and love your God with all your heart, soul, and resources is Deuteronomy 6:5. So another example of Jesus in the desert, when he's confronted with Satan, he has 3 challenges from Satan, and with each challenge, he answers with verses from the 5 books of Moses. Jesus says, why don't you make bread out of these rocks? And he says, not by bread alone does man live, but by everything that comes out of the mouth of God does man live. Turns out that is a direct quote from the verse in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3. Then his second claim, where he says, do not test Yahweh your God, that's Deuteronomy 6:16. And the third response, where he says, worship only one God but Yahweh, that's Deuteronomy 6:13, and multiple other sources in the Torah. It's the first commandment of the 10 commandments. Yehovah is God, there is no other. So I'm not here to argue for the classic points of Judaism. I definitely do not buy what the rabbis have done with Judaism, what the Pharisees have done with Judaism. I'm not anti-Jesus. I actually resonate a lot with the character of Jesus. He was a man who went against corruption. He went against the corruption of the rabbis. He went against the corruption of the government. I'm personally married to a non-Jewish woman who grew up Christian, so I'm not in any ways like opposed to this. And in fact, I find that Jews and Christians should be allies ultimately. But I do believe that both Judaism and Christianity have corrupted the faith of the Bible. And the reason why I say that is because I'm steeped in the Torah. I find myself in the beginning. Most people start from the end. If they're Christians, they start from the New Testament. If they're Jews, they start from the Talmud. I start from the beginning. Open up. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. When you read from the beginning, you're given a very clear picture of what the Torah is about and what this faith that's developing, which begins its development at the beginning of the Bible. What is this faith all about? And the claim that I want to make today is that the Torah, which is not the Talmud, it's not everything the rabbis say, that's not the definition of the Torah. The Torah means the law, it's the 5 books of Moses. The written word that is in the 5 books of Moses, it's in the Christian Bible, it's in the Jewish Bible, it's identical. What it says in there is that you must follow everything that's written in this book without adding or subtracting, and you must worship this one God without adding any other gods. And so when you come to Christianity and you come to a lot of the claims that are in Christianity, I don't have a problem with the character and the story of Jesus conceptually, but there are details of Christianity that I have a problem with. The New Testament is less problematic than the church that comes after, right? So then, as it goes with religion, you start off with the foundational text, and then you actually proceed with the leaders and the priests and the church, and then you have more and more rules, and you have more and more saints, and you have more and more people that you have to incorporate into this vision. But ironically, I'm going to give you a trinity of verses, okay, trinity of sources, 3 sources to prove my case, and I believe that with this I can rest my case. A, that Jesus is not God, and B, that the law is not abolished, because that's another big claim of Christianity, which is that with the coming of Jesus, the law is abolished. And I aim to disprove both of those things. So the first source I'm going to give you is the book of Exodus, chapter 3, verse 15. Exodus 3:15 speaks of the encounter that Moses had with Yahweh, with Yehovah, in the desert, in the burning bush. And Exodus 3:15 reads, God spoke again to Moses, and he said, so shall you say to the children of Israel, Yahweh, the God of your forefathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my remembrance from generation to generation. So instead of asking the church who God is, instead of asking the rabbi who God is, let's ask God who God is. In Exodus 3:15, God says, my name is Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is my name forever. This is my memorial for eternity. So if someone's going to tell you thousands of years later, oh, by the way, God is Jesus, well, that's not what God himself wants to be called, right? So look, I understand people that say, well, Jesus is God in the flesh. He's the messenger of God. He's the angel of God. Okay, so when you pray to God, you say, dear angel, who art my God? No, you just pray to God, God himself. At the end of the day, God is a very complex being, far beyond our comprehension and understanding. But when God says, this is my name, this is how I want you to refer to me, I think it requires us to actually refer to him that way and not pretend that we have the right to project our understandings onto God. Let's take that. God says, I am Yahweh, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. this is my memorial for generations, for eternity. So if I'm sitting down to pray to God, I'm going to say, Yehovah, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, please help me, please, and
Right.
as follows. So that's my first source. My second source is going to be Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 2. And it also appears, the same verse appears in Deuteronomy 12:32 in the Christian Bible and 13:1 in the Hebrew Bible. That verse reads as follows: You shall not add or subtract to any of the commandments that I've given you in this Torah. Okay? So understand that very clearly, that the foundational document of this entire religion, the entire religion that drives both Judaism and Christianity, and Islam, by the way, because Islam still believes in Moses and Jesus. They just say, now we're Islam now. Okay, fine. But let's go back to the foundation. This is the foundation. These words are true. So if the law itself internally creates a system that you may not deviate you may not deviate from it to the right or the left, and you may not add or subtract to it. What that means is that anyone, whether they're Jews, by the way, the rabbis have 5,000 laws in the Talmud, 5,000, okay? In the Torah, there's about 200, all right? The rabbis have completely broken the Torah, okay? I'm not here to defend the institution of Judaism. Right. But Christianity has also done away with the law. And there's many, many statements in the New Testament, particularly writings of Paul, mostly, saying that the law is death, the law is a burden, the law is terrible, the law is abolished, it's no more, it's gone. And that's obviously been adopted by the Catholic Church, by the majority of Christianity. But that's in complete violation of, again, the foundational text. You may not add or subtract to this commandment. And my third source is going to be Deuteronomy 6:4, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Everyone knows this one. Hear, O Israel, Yehovah is our God. Yehovah is one. Okay? So when you enter into the church and they say, God is three, but of course, three that is one. Great. Maybe God is 59, that is one. Maybe God is 1,000,000, that's one. We all know that God is a unified being, but for us to pinpoint the specific aspects of God, to say, oh, it's Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and that is the Torah, that is the Lord, I think that's entirely contrary to God saying, I am one. End of story. Okay, we're not here to sit here and break apart the unity of God. God says, I'm one. One is the going number. So again, when you read the Torah, you have a very clear picture. Yahweh is the going name. One is the going number. And this law cannot be changed. It cannot be added to or subtracted from, period, end of story. So anyone that follows the Torah that in any way contradicts these three fundamental principles that are unshakable from the perspective of the Torah itself, I can't see how they're truly following this religion righteously. And again, my goal here is simply to call people to the true faith, I believe is the true covenant of Yahweh. And if people have Jesus as a role model, or they appreciate his character and what he did as a son of God in this world, I don't have a problem with that. But what I do think is a problem is when people start to engage in foreign worship and start to break apart the number one, start to refer to a name other than Yehovah, and start to break down the law. And again, even the idea that God is the Son, in the Torah, God is referred to as the Father. And, the Father comes first. And that's an important point. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. And the last thing that I'll just say is that there are Christians that have this belief. They'd be called Unitarian, Torah observant Christians, right? But they're pretty much an afterthought, in the same way that in Judaism, I am what would be called a Karaite Jew or a scriptural Jew. Like, I only follow the written Torah. If you talk to Jews, they'll laugh off such an existence of people, because to them, the orthodoxy is prevailing. The rabbi's authority is more important than anything else. To me, I don't take authority from people. I take authority from God. And we all agree that the Torah is the foundational document of this faith. And so no man following that, and no man claiming to be God following that, has the ability or the right to contradict the foundation of our faith.
So can I start with, because you spoke about the 5 books of Moses, but do you, is the New Testament, what is the New Testament to you?
So, you can even say, what is the Old Testament to me? I don't believe that even the Old Testament, I don't even believe that the Old Testament has authority to contradict the Torah. In the same way, I don't believe that the New Testament or the Talmud or the Quran or, frankly, anyone has the ability to contradict the Torah. You know, when you look at the Old Testament, it's largely historical. You're seeing the history of Israel and Judah and the house of David and all that playing out within the Old Testament, as well as the destruction of the Jews and their multiple exiles that they have to go through. The story of the New Testament is historical as well, the historical figure of Jesus and his life. However, you know, we have to just be clear that the people writing these books were people. They were people that lived many times in different time periods than the actual figures being discussed, including Jesus. These books were written by people who had a vested interest in capitalizing on the authority of these figures. When you look at the 5 books of Moses, Moses was writing this book himself. If you look at Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 24, it says that Moses himself completed writing this Torah. So that's a really powerful point, which is that, first of all, Moses, who's spoken to be the greatest prophet of God, who is in direct communication with God, who's speaking mouth to mouth, face to face, is in direct dialogue with God as a man speaks to his fellow, is what the Torah says. That Moses is the one who's writing these books in real time in front of an entire nation of witnesses, the most witnesses ever to see divine events like the revelation at Sinai, like the splitting of the sea, like the exodus from Egypt and the destruction of the Pharaoh and his army. All of that was witnessed by an entire nation, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And when we look at that, we can see that this is a very reliable document. And it's the foundation, again, of our entire faith. Without the 5 books of Moses, you pull away the rug. What's your faith? You don't even know who God is. You don't even know what the law is. What can you do? What can't you do? Right? That's a very important point of religion. And that's what's kept Christianity strong. That's what's kept Judaism strong, is their foundation in moral clarity and guidance. The reason why the world is lost today is because we don't have moral clarity. Right? It's not because we didn't declare belief in Jesus Christ, right? It's because we don't know what the fuck to do, right? And guess what tells you exactly what to do? The Torah.
Sorry, that was the best way to put it.
No, that's fine.
You heard it here first, folks. We don't know what the fuck to do. No, but I agree with you, though. I think there is a it is a little off topic slightly, but I will say, when our religions are battling about what the religion is to begin with, how do you expect those followers of any of those religions to feel solid in their grounding to begin with? If there's constantly this back and forth, or who's right, who's wrong, is Jesus this, is God that, you know, the Trinity, the Holy, like all of these different scenarios. And I could understand why that would kind of cause one person to even question the idea of, is God real, right? Because if you can't even get a rabbi, a priest, and I don't know, whatever, in a room together and find agreement in terms of even what Bible is correct or what books out of the Bible are correct, then the foundations are going to be faulty everywhere to begin with, right? And that doesn't put I would say, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of faith in your leaders or in your church, in the Bible, in believing in God. And I think this is where most people go skeptical. And so the morality falls in line with that faith, right? Because if you believe, then obviously your moralities are going to fall in line with that. But if you're skeptical on that, it's like, well, why do good? Why be good? Does it matter anymore? You know, they can't even agree on a book. Like, why do I care at this point? So yes, I see what you're saying there. And I agree with you that's why nobody knows what they're doing. Right. Now, what is, but do you entirely reject the New Testament though? You said it's both historical, and the Old Testament, you find it to be historical, but the New Testament is specifically a historical figure of Jesus and, you know, kind of telling the story along the lines. But do you reject it entirely in terms of your faith and what you follow?
Well, again, I definitely, like I said, I see lots of value in the character of Jesus and in the story. However, it has to be made clear that the New Testament was written years after the death of Jesus. It was written by people who had a vested interest in creating a religion surrounding a single character. So they, by definition, had to elevate him to be the end-all be-all. But again, what you mentioned about the confusion of religion, that's something that I went through myself, coming from a Jewish background, from the most religious possible, like, you know, the long curly things, the big hats, the big kippahs, like that's how I was raised. Okay, so I've definitely had to question the foundations of morality and of authority, because what people are telling you is listen to us because we said so. The vision that I'm providing here is that all of us need to agree on the foundation. And the foundation is inarguably the 5 books of Moses, because that's the first 5 books of the Bible. It's what comes first. So if the 5 books of Moses set a undeniable standard, then no one who comes after that has the ability to contradict it. So again, to the extent that I see a nice parable in the New Testament, I'll smile and I'll enjoy that lesson. To the extent that I appreciate aspects of the story of Jesus, definitely I take the liberty of that. I think the Jews have a lot of hatred of Jesus. I don't like that. They have a lot of bad things to say. You know, the Talmud says bad things about Jesus, all this stuff. Like I said, I'm not a Talmudist rabbi. I reject the Talmud entirely. I think the Talmud is a awful representation of the Torah. It's not the Torah whatsoever. It's a bunch of opinions of rabbis that was written down 1,500 to 2,000 years after the Torah was given. However, when we talk about the level that Moses was on and the level of communication that he had with God, setting the stage for all this to even exist, we should at least be able to agree on the foundational document. And so that's why I continue to reference the foundational document as the ultimate standard, that everything that comes after that needs to be held accountable to what comes before it. And I think that is our chance at unity.
Okay, hold on just for a second. I've got a little one upset. Just feel free to say hello to the chat.
No worries. Well, hello everybody. It's nice to see you all here, and we see some stuff in the chat. Someone says, yeah, anyone who puts someone before Yahweh is following a false religion according to the Torah. I mean, that has to be the case. We're looking at the 10 commandments. The first commandment of the 10 commandments is, I am Yahweh your God. You shall have no other God before me. Right. And so that's just ultimately the standard that's set. That is what it means to be Torah observant. And if you're going to place other entities in front of Yahweh, even if you claim that entity is the same as Yahweh or is an extension of Yahweh, it's like, well, then why don't we just refer to him the way he wants to be called? Yehovah, Yahweh, the Father. And I just think that's reasonable.
Yeah, sorry, he had a little bellyache. All right. So you mentioned about the books of Moses, right? And you know, my thought process, because you said that's the original source. He wrote the books, and there's hundreds of thousands of people that witnessed this. How do we know that they witnessed? Is there something else that sources this information, kind of like a citation, I guess I could think of, that thousands of people witnessed all of these things that Moses did and him writing the book, and that it is true?
Yeah, well, look, let's just evaluate it based off of the faith claim and based off of the historical claim that's being made. It's the most dramatic historical claim that's being made, and it's being made regarding an entire nation of people. So the only way to verify such a claim would be that an entire people witnessed it. And this was long understood and accepted as the history of the world. Like everyone in that region, whether Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, everyone in the Middle East accepted that this was the history. Everyone knew that this actually was what happened. And, you know, I'm tired of secular morons who don't even know what a man and a woman is telling me that I'm an idiot for believing in God and for believing in the existence of the divine and the ability that everything in this earth exists, yet that there is no force that's a higher power that can actually make these things happen. I mean, look, the reality is that the Torah speaks to us on a level that's undeniably in perfect harmony with existence itself. And that's another reason why I don't like getting involved with all the other religious arguments like messianic, end times, afterlife. I don't know about any of these things. So there's a beautiful verse that I'll read to you here, because it's one of the most important verses. Again, establishing the supremacy of the foundational document and telling you there's actually really nowhere else for you to look beyond this. So if you have a look at Deuteronomy 29:29, it's 29:28 in the Hebrew Bible, 29:29 in the Christian Bible. Here's what it says. It says, the hidden things belong to Yahweh our God, and the revealed things belong to us and our children for eternity, to do everything that is written in this Torah. Okay, so the hidden things are for God. You understand? Like,
Right.
I'm not claiming
mystery.
to know everything. The mystery, yeah, like literally all of existence is unknown. If you want to be honest here, like
Right.
we don't know a damn thing, right? So God is saying, look, leave that to God. Don't pretend that you actually know what's going on. Don't be some religious guru making up claims and having everyone worship you. Okay. Let's be honest. We don't know these things. All right. However, there are things that have been revealed to us and to our children so that we can live wholesome lives. I see you say maternity nation, right? Mothers, fathers, men and women, children, life, the creation of life. These things are tangible. They're true. They're obvious. And this is actually what God ordains from the start. Genesis chapter 1, God says, be fruitful and multiply. Genesis chapter 2, God says, cling to your woman and become one flesh. These are life-giving principles. God says everything that's revealed to you about life is revealed to you in this Torah. You don't need to go searching after the unknown. You don't need to go inquiring about the future or about the past or all these things. The reality is we live here in the present moment. Something you might find interesting is the name Yahweh, Yehovah. The root of Yahweh is Hoveh, Yehovah. Hoveh means present, the present. God is the God of the present moment. So we don't just encounter God in the past and the future. We encounter God in this present moment. This is where we can actually interact with him. Okay. God wants us to interact with him in the here and now. And when people kind of remove themselves from God by getting involved in all these really what I think are inconsequential debates at the end of the day, we're not close to what really matters, and we can't unite around the principles that we can all agree on. And I really do think that what's revealed to us in the Torah is a ironclad rule of law that can govern a nation and can govern a civilization. Just the 10 Commandments itself. If the entire world started following the 10 Commandments, today the world would be at peace because there'd be no murder, there'd be no adultery, there'd be no stealing. We'd all have the same God. We'd all rest on the seventh day. We'd all honor our parents. We wouldn't lie. We wouldn't covet. I mean, that's like the solution, right? People are like, oh, the 10 Commandments, oh, that's fucking dumb. What? It's dumb? Have you seen the news? Have you heard about the 80 million abortions? Like, what? It's dumb, you know? So like people are really in denial here that the Torah really is the solution. And frankly, it just doesn't help people to break apart that clarity.
Well, even both, Christians follow the 10 Commandments and the concept behind it too, right?
Of course, yeah.
I wouldn't even say necessarily that it's the lack of following the 10 Commandments or following the Torah per se. It's the lack of religious foundation within people. Like you have so many people that are secularist at this point that it's. I feel like at one time it was weird to not believe in God. It was weird to not have faith. It was weird to not have a religion. And now you're kind of the weirdo if you are religious or so on and so forth. Like we've slowly been pushed out, both in Judaism, Christian, like in all sorts of branches. And it also depends on your community too. But I would say that the 10 Commandments are there for people who want to follow God and want to follow their religion. But if you don't have the religion starting point, foundation, or even the grasp for it or the want for it, the 10 Commandments don't mean anything at that point anyways. So, but it would fall down in the morality line, right? I think that most of our laws kind of fall in line with 10 Commandments in terms of like thou shalt not kill, right? Adultery, so on and so forth. But
when you say our law, you're referring to Christian law or American law?
Like our societal, like Christian, or I'm sorry, American law, right? Most of
adultery
them
is not punishable by anything.
It is in some states, it is in some military, and then it also is like they've made it a civil tort right now, so you could have issues there. And I think it used to actually be maybe not criminal, but definitely there are consequences beyond that. But I think we've like mildly adjusted things to where it's like, is it criminal or civil issues, right? But it's still our laws are follow some piece of that because our foundations come from a lot of religious background, right? So my question to you is your interpretation, right? You're taking the Torah literally, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what if another rabbi takes it literally but understands it differently, or another priest or pastor or so on and so forth? What if they read something and still understood it differently, even if they thought they were taking it literally?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, there's only so much room for that. Like, if it says something explicit, then we can all agree on what was explicitly said. Obviously, there'll always be debates and questions, but I think that even if we just all united around what was explicit, the Torah doesn't leave much to imagination. Like, it's very clear when it wants to be, and when the Torah is not clear, then it must not be that important, or there must be different ways of going about it, right? So I think that we have to follow what's explicitly said and what's explicitly clear, and then when it comes to other details or other minor debates, we should have those conversations. In fact, the Torah encourages that conversation all throughout the Bible. We're told, speak of these words all the time. That's the first chapter of Joshua, says speak about the Torah of Moses all the time. So we're encouraged to have dialogue surrounding the text, to have conversations. What is the best way to go about this? How are we supposed to implement it? How, try to settle disputes and debates. That's necessarily a part of the Torah, right? That's fine and good. The real point is, though, like, there's only so much within interpretation that needs to go on. So, I'll give you an example, right? So, in Judaism, you have this idea that you can't have meat and milk together. But then when you look at the commandment says, do not have a kid in its mother's milk, right? And they say that means you cannot have any meat and milk together ever. So even if it's not the mother, it's like the metaphorical mother. So like you can never have meat and milk together. The thing is that that's not an interpretation that's based off of the text, right? It's a decision to understand this completely disconnected from the text itself. And in fact, they go so far as to say, for a extra precaution, we'll have you not have chicken and milk together as well. Now, you might understand why that's so ridiculous, is because chickens don't even make milk, right? So you can never have a chicken in its mother's milk. But the point is, they'll have false interpretations, and then they'll put up additional fences around those interpretations, and then claim that those fences are also binding law. That's where religion starts to lose its religion, right? It starts to lose its leg to stand on, because it's just a bunch of people who are drunk on power restricting others and saying, listen to me because I said so. So I think ultimately, if the text is the final word, then within that we can have debates and we can have disagreements, and we're encouraged to have those conversations. It's explicit. Speak of these words, teach them to your children. That is what we're called to be doing. But again, the part that is clear, and people don't have the authority to deviate from what's clear.
But even on I know that a lot of Bibles, there's like translation errors that came through the different throughout the times, right? Is like this type of Hebrew is translated this type of Latin, or this type of this, or this type of that. I mean, do we know we're reading the right thing at this point?
Well, I can give you consolation on that front, because I actually am fluent in biblical Hebrew, and I've read and translated the entire Torah from Hebrew to English. I've seen all of the translations, the Jewish translations and the Christian translations. They're all pretty much the same. There are minor differences in language, and God willing, I'll publish my Torah so people can get my take on what I think the literal meaning is. However, it doesn't mean that you can't read the Bible. Like, you open the Jewish Bible, the Christian Bible, the differences are minimal. What matters is you get the idea, you get the message, and the message definitely comes through no matter what translation you read.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's where I'm kind of going with the concept of, I read it and I literally, I'm interpreting it on a literal terms. But my translation is slightly different from your translation, and my understanding of this word could be different from your understanding of this word, right? And then you also have different language barriers moving around, where one word may kind of mean this, but it also could mean that if you put it in this language and that, and so on and so forth. And that's where I'm saying,
but my point is that it's minor, right? Like, it's true, there are variations in translation, but it's not as major as people are making it out to be. Because remember, people have a vested interest in overcomplicating things, being like, oh, it's impossible to understand. Like, if you go to a rabbi, he'll tell you that the Torah is impossible to understand without what's called the oral Torah, the oral tradition, where the rabbis speak their own thousands of opinions for thousands of years. And you cannot understand a simple 250-page book written in clear language unless you read 5,000 confused, muddled books of rabbis' opinions that were written over 3,000 years, right? Like that's counterintuitive, right? You don't get more clarity from adding more confusion. First, establish what's clear. And then, yes, there are variations and all that. And we can go through those understandings and those conversations. Again, it's definitely helpful and productive to have those conversations, but we first have to agree upon what's clear and obvious.
Well, I mean, that kind of makes me think of philosophy in terms of like how, for instance, Kant, writes his things and then somebody else comes in and interprets his things. And then somebody comes in and interprets that and compares it to something else. Right. That's how I would see that understanding, right? Is other people saying, here's what it says. Here's my thought process, especially when we look at all of these other things and they're pulling all of the information together and putting it in one full interpretation for the reader to understand. Like, hey, I know context is key sometimes. So when this sentence says this, if we refer back to this book over here, it also said this here, and that would, correlate. So I think that sometimes that can be helpful when people need to understand more than just literal. I think it's like completes the picture, maybe, if that makes sense. I think it could be helpful, yeah. Right? You're saying you should just accept the Torah, the 5 books of Moses exactly as they are. There's no other interpretation needed.
Yeah, again, like for example, the verses that I quoted for you are explicit.
Mm-hmm.
That's not like there's no different interpretations there. There are things where we can have questions, but there are explicit verses, and it's important to focus on what is explicit in nature, in life. God is calling us to be simple with him. There's a verse in Deuteronomy. God says, be wholesome with Yahweh your God. Don't go after the witchcraft and the oracles and the psychics and the spiritists. Be wholesome with God. Trust in him. Leave the hidden things to him. Like there are doubts. There are things that are...
Oh, I just lost sound. Oh, there you are. It's good. I hear you now. It could have been me. It could have very well been me.
Yeah, it just
I think your mic clicked out.
Do you hear me now?
I can hear you, but it sounds like it's on a different mic. It happens. Don't worry.
That's weird.
I would check the mic settings and click the little arrow down there and make sure it's on the mic that you're supposed to be on.
It is. I don't know what happened. It's weird.
It sounds slightly different, but it's not horrible. We can still move forward with it. We won't die.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah. Is it fine?
I think it's fine. I think it's fine.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry.
We've had more tech issues before.
Okay. All right. Let me know if it stays all right.
Yeah, I think it'll be fine. You were on. Oh God, where were we?
No, it's okay. I was telling you about being wholesome with God and leaving the hidden things for him, and how the redemption arc in the Torah is described as returning to God heart and soul, and that's explicit in Deuteronomy chapter 30 verse 2, where God says, when you return to God with all your heart and all your soul, and you follow the words that are written in this Torah, then you will receive redemption. So this is Deuteronomy chapter 30 verse 10. When you listen to the voice of Yahweh your God, to guard his commandments and his decrees that are written in this book of the Torah, when you return to Yahweh your God with all your heart and all your soul. Okay, so those are very powerful words. That's explicitly saying that the call that God is having to us is that we need to follow what is written, not oral, what is in this book, not another book, and the decrees and the judgments and the commandments. These things are central to the correct behavior that God wants from us. And I just think that's abundantly clear and obvious when you look at it from a beginning perspective, when you start from the beginning. And again, I do believe those are the things we can actually unite around, and that's where we can start to see some blessing, because let's leave it to God to define himself, but we should be just dealing with the definitions that he gives us.
Okay. Let's move over into the New Testament and when Jesus comes about, because I know most the Christianity believes that it's a trinity, right? The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. So with Jesus, though, you still think, okay, he was a great guy. He had an awesome, storyline and a lot of great learning points to come out of it, morality, so on and so forth, parables, yada yada yada. But like, what would be your solid definition of him in terms of who he was to God?
Who he was to God. So, I mean, within the New Testament itself, there are what I would deem contradictory statements, where you see Jesus describing himself as being entirely submitted to God, subjugated to God. He says things like, my God, my Father, he's the only one who knows. I receive my power from him. And so you have a very solid group of verses in the New Testament that make Jesus seem simply to be like a son, not actually God himself. And then once in a while, you have this point where Jesus is elevated to worship. At some point, they start calling him the Lord. But he's still differentiated from God, right? So it says God the Father and the Lord Jesus Christ, right? And so they're differentiating him, but they start to worship him more and more. And I just read the book of Revelations where you have Jesus apparently is old now and he has white hair and he proclaims, I'm the first and the last, right? And it's the Son of Man, Jesus, saying, I'm the first and the last. And that clearly implies that he's saying that he's God. And obviously later on the church completely establishes that he's God. But again, to me, it just doesn't really matter what it says ultimately if it's going to contradict the Torah, and that's, again, what I'm going to be doing to the rabbis in Judaism, is going to be doing to the Gospels in the New Testament, is they have to hold themselves accountable to the original revelation if this is going to be consistent. And, I just don't see these ideas revealed in the Torah. And if the Torah is telling you what is revealed to you is written in this Torah, what God wants from you is to return to him heart and soul and follow what is written in this Torah. I don't see a word about saying, and believe in my son Jesus Christ so that you may receive eternal life. That's not a commandment. So going back to do not add or subtract from the commandments, that's not even described as the ultimate redemption. The ultimate redemption is you yourself having a personal return to God, heart and soul, and he himself, God, Yahweh, Jehovah, the Father, returning and gathering you from exile and saving you, and along with your children. So there's an emphasis on you and you procreating and having a family and being a righteous individual before God. To again create central claims of religion post-Torah, I think it's by definition a departure from the foundation of the religion, which says there are no other commandments, there are no other revelations. Like, this is what you need to know, this is what you need to follow. And to the extent that things are going to contradict or are going to pull you in directions away from this foundational document, I just don't think that it's valid.
So do you still do you believe that Jesus is still the Son of God?
I don't know. I think it's possible. I'm not like Jews in general have statements like God cannot manifest in the flesh. That's an argument that Jews make. And I think that's an absurd argument because the Torah explicitly talks about God manifesting in the flesh. There's a man who Jacob calls God who wrestles with him all night. There are 3 men who are called God who dine with Abraham and have a meal with him. God manifests in a bush, in a cloud. So the idea that God cannot manifest in physical matter is false. That's anti-Torah as well. That's a Jewish argument against Christianity. The real argument to be made, again, is that nowhere in the Torah are we commanded to have faith in the Son of God. We are commanded to have faith in God himself and not to put any other God or any other name before him. And so we can't be, as someone who's starting off from the Torah, they're not allowed to, by the way, at the threat of death, they're not allowed to depart from that fundamental faith claim, which is that Yahweh is God, there is no other. He is the God of gods, the Lord of lords, and the first commandment of the 10 Commandments is do not have any other God before him. So, he's the way, and when it comes to this religion that develops 1,500 years after the religion began with Moses and the Israelites, and then you have Jesus coming onto the scene. It's really a new idea. It's a new name. It's a new concept that's not introduced to us in the Torah, and it's not actually what we're commanded to do. And if anything, it's what we're commanded not to do. We're commanded not to involve ourselves with other gods. And even if Jesus is a true messenger of God, he's still not God himself, because God himself is Yahweh the Father, and God himself is actually invisible. He's not visible to us. There's a passage in Exodus that says Moses wanted to encounter God face to face, and God said, "No man can see my face and live." Right. So that's a very important point here, which is that God is beyond. God has to be beyond Jesus, right? Because God is not. Human beings cannot see God and live, right? So even if God manifests to a degree in a human being, that's not the totality of God. And
well, would we consider, I mean, I understand maybe when Jesus was alive and roaming about and doing what he needed to do, right? But then when he died and rose on the third day and so on and so forth, he wouldn't be human by that point. He wouldn't be man. He would have been in spirit. So couldn't you say that based on that premise alone, then it would be able to count in as, well, he's no longer man. Now he went back home, right? Now he is part of God.
Yeah, but even then he's appearing to the disciples after the resurrection, right? In spirit form, and he's still appearing to them, and they're still envisioning a man, they say, as the son of man, right? So he has human form even in a spirit realm, right? He actually is presenting himself with the appearance of the Son of Man. Son of Man means a human being, son of Adam, Adam being the human father. So if we see a man with a certain image, by definition, that's not God. When we're introduced to a God, here it's Exodus.
But we were made in the image of God, though.
Image of God, right? So we're in the image of God, but we're not God himself. So, for example, the serpent told Eve, "You can receive this hidden knowledge, and you'll be like God," right? Well, we can't actually be like God. We're not God. We are below him. We are created beings. We didn't create ourselves, and we need to humble ourselves to that. And so, look at Exodus 33, 20. Exodus 33:20. God said, "You cannot see my face, for no man can see my face and live." This means that, no matter what we encounter of God in this life, in this world, it's still beyond us. We need to understand and humble ourselves to the fact that God is beyond all recognition and comprehension, and the best we can do is follow obediently and live out our lives as human beings in the correct fashion. So, I don't, again.
Go ahead.
No, I don't see a lot of benefit to following this character of Jesus and actually making that the center of your worship and your faith.
Well, what happened with Moses then? Because didn't he God appeared through the burning bush? Wouldn't that be like his way of seeing God?
Of course, that's what I'm saying. It's a manifestation of God. It's a aspect of God manifesting, but God is telling Moses that if you wanted to fully encounter me face to face, what is a face-to-face encounter? It's a full-on confrontation. I can see you for who you are. That's an impossibility for a human being, flesh and blood, little man, little woman, walking around planet Earth. That's not free. Like, we're talking about God here. Like, this is the infinity of existence. Like, you think you're just going to witness that and walk away and no, like that's not how it's going to work, right? The reality is that we have to understand that God is beyond all compare, all comprehension. And one of the problems in Christianity is that when we put God in an image, right, you have now God is just a man on a cross, right? And so you even see people bowing down to the cross. I'm not saying all Christians do that, but Christians do that. That is a thing, right? And when you look at the Ten Commandments, the second commandment is, do not make images and bow down to them as God, right? So, like, that's a very important point, that like people have to be very clear on the fact that God is beyond form.
But like my thought process for Jesus, right, would be God knew that we needed a human portion to better understand him, right? And you kind of dive into the idea that God is mystery, and then like the things that are unseen, and then we can handle what is being revealed to us, right? So if I would think of it this way, like God revealed Jesus to us in human form because that's what we do understand. We do have the concept of like, oh, the mystery of faith and everything beyond that, but we can't comprehend it. Like thinking of God and the infinite of him basically is like a mind bender when you start really brain waving, and it's like, ooh, it hurts, right? But a human element, like something that we can see and understand, is better for us to process, right?
Mhm.
So my thought process would be here. He gave us something that he knew we could, it's tangible. He can reveal it to us. We can understand it. He can speak through him. And we're able to accept that more willingly, right? Than the unknown. We're humans. We naturally reject the unknown and we don't like it, right? Because it's too many questions that are unanswered. And then, obviously Jesus died on the cross and then rose and so on and so forth. And the story goes. And my thought process would be that he just knew we needed that. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. And again, there's beauty to that. And there's beauty to God making himself tangible to us. And that's ultimately a gift, right? Even making this whole existence. We live tangible existence. We are flesh beings. We're made of the earth. So that's a kindness, right? It's like God so loved the world that he shared his son with us. Yeah, you can definitely perceive that as love. At the same time, God appeared to us in the burning bush. Does that mean we should now worship the burning bush? To worship the vehicle that God manifested himself in would be a disservice to the worship of God, because look, God may be sharing little snippets of himself with us, but ultimately every individual is called to encounter that unknown, right? The encounter with the unknown is ultimately the encounter with God, the encounter with the true spirit being that is beyond all of our comprehension and experience. That's really where faith enters the picture. So I think, again, we'd be doing ourselves a disservice. It would be reductive to worship the cloud of glory, to worship the burning bush, to worship the angel that wrestled with Jacob. Jacob didn't wrestle with him. Jacob didn't worship him. He wrestled him, right? And then he walked away and said, "Damn, I just saw God face to face." He says that. He said he saw God face to face, but there's levels here, right? There's the God that you can interact with in the flesh, and then there's the God that is just beyond all comprehension and experience, and that is God himself, if you will. And then God is actually
how could Jacob wrestle with God in the flesh? But and we accept that, or at least you're accepting of that, but you're not accepting that God could come through as Jesus.
I never said I don't accept that. I do think God could do that. God can do anything. Of course he can. I'm just saying I don't think that we should worship the angel that Jacob wrestled with. So I don't think we should worship Jesus. I think we should worship Yahweh, because he is described to us as being the source, the one who begot, the Father who begot everything that comes after him. And all of these messengers, these angels, these sons, these manifestations, you shouldn't worship that. I'm not saying it's impossible. Like I said, that's the argument you'll hear from Jews. I think it's an asinine argument. God definitely can manifest in the flesh, and he already has in the Bible many times. And again, even seeing visions, Ezekiel sees visions of angels with all sorts of forms. So that's not unreasonable. The point that God is making to us is that he is beyond all of these forms, and we should not reduce him to an image and worship that image. We should worship the God that we cannot truly put in a nice little box and build him ourselves.
Well, I mean, how would you because as I said, like humans need tangibility, right? So how would you symbolize that to the human being to say, pray to God, right? There's no shrine, there's no cross, there's no symbol, there's nothing. Is it nothing?
Well, even Jesus said that, right? He told his disciples, he said, if you really want to pray, you don't got to go to the synagogue and stand in the front and show everyone what a great prayerful man you are. You can go in a dark room alone and talk to the Father. And that's what true prayer is. So Jesus, that's a direct quote from the New Testament, right? So those are the kind of the things I love about Jesus when he says things like that, because that's the true beauty of faith, is that the connection with the Father and with God is just, it's not, it doesn't require all these external things. It requires an internal return. And like I read to you in the Torah, God is calling us to return to him heart and soul, right? That's an internal journey. God is calling us to that internal journey with him. And that's even beyond all of the other external factors, right? Like for the example, the Jewish people, they don't have their temple right now. They don't have their priesthood. They're not slaughtering cows. Because you know why? Because God says, I don't care about that. That's not what you need right now. You don't need to slaughter cows and think that that's going to help you. Isaiah chapter 1 also points this out very well. He says, you and your fatted cows, like God is tired of your festivals and he hates your offerings. Help the needy and the widow and the orphan, like do something good. This is ridiculous. Like, he's like, you're just following the commandments of man like robots.
So maybe we'll come full circle then, because you kind of kicked off this whole thought process of that we've kind of almost skewed religion in such a way where we are doing just kind of any which about, right? Do you think that the like post the Torah, that at some point adding all of these other books into the Bible and the way we utilize the Bible now in church and throughout different religions, do you think we've kind of, I like to call it a Bible grifting, right? We've grifted the Bible. We've turned it into this whole big other escapade of other things that we have to do. Don't forget to pay your tithe to the church, and don't forget to do this. But all of these different things have come about from the Bible, I think, in a perversion almost. But do you think that even the idea of worshiping Jesus and accepting Jesus as your savior, as your place to get to God, do you think that has been kind of almost perverted too as well throughout the religion in a sense where it's kind of like you skewed it in such a way to make people do these other things that they shouldn't have had to have done?
Absolutely. I think that's very clear. Again, Jesus is explicit when he speaks to his disciples, telling them to follow the commandments, right? Like what commandments is he talking about? He's talking about the 5 books of Moses. He says, not one dot or tittle from the law should be removed until it's fulfilled. And people say, well, that means it's abolished. I mean, to me, that's just like opposite thinking. If you need to fulfill it, then you need to fulfill it. And heaven and earth shall not pass away. We need to fulfill the law. And the law is not the law of the church. The law is not the law of the rabbis. The law is the law of God. And that's written in the 5 books of Moses, that you shall not add or subtract to those commandments. So, for example, you have the Protestant group of Christianity that rebelled against the Catholic Church because they said, who are you to tell us what to do? You claim to have the authority of Jesus. That's convenient. But also, who are you? And that's a valid thing for reformations and revolutions to happen within religions in order for, and within governments as well. I think we're seeing that happening in our country too, that people want to take back ownership on their lives, and they realize that they're being controlled by people who don't care about them, who are just looking for power. And when you look at God, he's calling us to freedom. The whole story of the Exodus from Egypt with the Israelites is God is taking slaves out of slavery to freedom. So the whole trajectory of the Bible is a road to freedom through submission to God. And if we're all equally yoked and submitted to God himself, then we're free, because we're not enslaving each other, we're not hurting each other, we're not harming each other, we're actually helping each other and doing our best to help one another and lift each other up.
Okay. I do have one more question, but to anyone who would like to join the open panel, I am dropping the link into the live chat now. Go ahead and start clicking that button and jump backstage. Hang tight back there, and then we'll kick off open panel here shortly. So what would you say if, like, I'm trying to think of like the perfect picture for, based off of what you're saying, the perfect picture that I see would be, there would be no church. There would be no ideology of or idolization of any type of cross or Jesus or Mary or anything, I don't think there would be even a church to go to. I don't think there would be kind of like any of the such, because it sounds like what you've said is pray to God at home, and that's where he is. He's everywhere with you. You can do any which way you want, but I just read these 5 books, follow this, and you'll be fine. Is that my understanding, like somewhere in there?
100%. Also, can I put the link in my chat?
Oh, yeah. Just drop it. Yeah, if you just drop it in, it'll that one that I put in the backstage for you.
All right,
or they're welcome to come over on my side and they can find it here over in my live chat too. Either way is fine.
Okay, I'm posting it right now. What I wanted to say in response to you is I absolutely agree. Personally, I think that the best church is the home. I think the best pastors are parents. I think that, if we have parents educating their children and people worshiping God from the home, we will be seeing so much more of a powerful family unit, so much more of a powerful faith and love and life and unity in God. I think that the removal of people from the home by the government, by the religious institutions, it's an attempt to usurp power, to take the power that every family and individual have, and we're trying to pull that away from people. We're trying to say, okay, now your power is our power, and now you're here to serve the church. You're here to serve the government. I think that that's really destructive. And when you read the Torah, again, the emphasis is on family. You and your children, you and your wife, man and woman together, children. That is the model that God has in mind. And the priestly and the temple sacrifices are really a sidebar and a very specific niche where you have pilgrimage festivals and you bring offerings to God, but that's not the center of the religion. The center of the religion is the home, not the church, not the synagogue. So I 100% agree with that, and I think that the world would be a much better place if fathers and mothers were present in the home and they had many children together and they found the power that God has given them, as opposed to having to go worship at some church. I mean, again, I don't have a problem with sometimes having communal gathering, and there are leaders and there are teachers. That's all fine. But what it's become is completely institutionalized. And, the more that we build our towers of Babel, the more confused we get and the more God gets angry. So I think, we should just build a house, build a home, and dwell with our family, with our people, and just live in harmony and raise up the family, because the family is dying right now. The birth rate is below replacement. People don't give a damn about marriage, about children. That's the true sadness here. And I pray that we can all build ourselves up as human beings, following God's commandments.
Do you think some of these churches have taken advantage of that factor?
Of course. That's absolutely the case with all religions here. I mean, we're talking about religion is just another tool for control. That's what it's become. I mean, look at the government, look at the religious systems, look at the medical system, look at the educational system. We live in a time where literally all of the institutions are corrupt. Like, I cannot think of a single institution that's not corrupt. Maybe you can tell me. But the reality is that I think now is the time for us to return to God, because God is above all of these institutions. Institutions are man-made creations, and God is above all. So when we return to God, heart and soul, with our children, we're looking at true redemption.
Interesting. All right. I've already got some people that have jumped backstage. I'm going to go ahead. If you would like to join Open Panel, I still have some room back there. Feel free to go ahead and jump in now. If you are in avatar mode, that's all fine. I don't mind if you come up in avatar mode. I just need a quick cam up backstage to confirm you're not doing anything bad back there. So if you want to jump in, now's the time to do it. All right. So let's go through a couple super chats. Texas Bully Mom, she's being silly. She hit me up with some Candace Owens stuff the other day. She says Condens would call you Sierra, like she says Beery. Hopefully one of y'all know what I'm talking about. I know what you're talking about. I get it. Don't worry. I saw it come through, Texas.
I'm not that deep into Candace Owens propaganda. What does that mean?
It's just how she enunciates words is kind of where she's going with that, and how she would say my name. A lot of people say Sarah very differently, especially the northern. The more north you go, the more flimsy it gets. And of course, Dragon Fist TV hanging out backstage. He says, can't wait to get a couple minutes with this guy. He is back there. He's lit up. He's ready to go. He did message me prior, like just excited about this topic. So I can't wait to see him on here. Iotin sends in the big 50. She says, early worship of Jesus after his death was oral. Paul's letters and the New Testament Gospels were written 20 to 100 years after his death by eyewitnesses as they aged. Why would previously monotheistic Jewish folk start worshiping him upon his death?
Mm-hmm.
And that's questions to you.
I mean, yeah, I can't tell if she's arguing with me or agreeing with me, but when I see oral traditions, I immediately I think of my education in Judaism, which has the oral tradition as the primary thing that drives the religion. And I think that that's really the problem here. When we talk about people writing down books long after events took place, trying to fit it with their desires for how they want to present their religion, I think we run into problems. So, again, we go back to the written word, we go back to the foundation of the written word, and I think we get a very clear picture of what our worship is supposed to look like.
The shift from Old Testament to New Testament, though, what are your thoughts on the difference between the two? Because you acknowledge they're both historical writings, right? And I think most people would agree that the Bible is historical documentation, right? But the transition between old to new, what would your thoughts be for that? Because we see kind of like a whole new light come in when the New Testament kicks off, and it's like the thought process shifts into more forgiving, more like understanding, compassion, empathy, things of that nature. We see kind of in my mind, how I look at it, the Old Testament is God's like, this is what this is, shut up and listen, right? And then New Testament, he's like, okay, I know you guys are all stupid, so let me make this a little more humbling for you, and let me forgive you a little bit, and kind of almost like lower the IQ level of what he's trying to say to us in terms of understanding and kindness.
Okay, well, first of all, I don't think you should underrate your IQ level and your ability to comprehend what God is telling you. In addition to that, I do think that is a misconception. So, for example, if you look here at Exodus chapter 34, God is in dialogue with Moses, and he says that Yahweh is merciful, compassionate, slow to anger, full of kindness and truth. He preserves the kindness for thousands of generations and only preserves sin for 3 to 4 generations for his enemies, which means that if you're an enemy of God and that enemy of God status continues throughout the generations, it'll be preserved for 3 to 4 generations. But if you are beloved of God, God will preserve that kindness for thousands of generations. Okay, so if that's not grace, I don't know what it is. The scales are tipped so heavily in the direction of kindness and beauty and reward, and God is saying, I am merciful, compassionate, slow to anger. God is absolutely loving. You have to consider the fact that when you read the stories of the human beings in the Bible, they are so, as you said, so stupid. So, I mean, the Israelites are like the classic example of this terrible behavior, constantly complaining, lack of faith. God is talking to you. 5 minutes later, you're worshiping a golden calf. Like, what is going on, right? But that is human nature. Human nature will go against God even when he's standing right in front of you. That's really the message of the Torah. Because, like, for example, we talked about atheists. They're like, well, if God talked to me, maybe things would be different. It's like, no, they wouldn't be, because you can deny God even if he's talking to you. The point of the Torah is God is calling us to mature. God says that the formation of man's heart is evil from his youth. So that's in Genesis after the flood, right? So we tend towards evil, but God is calling us to be good. And he actually says we can do it. So in Genesis chapter 4, Cain is very angry because his sacrifice is not being accepted. And God says, by the way, if you improve yourself, you will be uplifted, right? And you can rule over sin, is what he tells Cain. So for all those people that think it's impossible, it's possible. God says, surely if you improve yourself, you'll be uplifted and you can rule over sin. Now, if not, sin is crouching at the door. It's ready to pounce. You can go down. And obviously Cain makes the sinful choice and murders his brother instead of working on himself. But the point is that God is calling us to this task because it is doable. It is possible. And I think we absolutely should go for it because God wants us to.
Okay. Iotin sent in the 10. She says, I'm arguing with you. Does that change the way you understand her chat here?
So yeah, I guess she's saying like the fact that they're worshiping him is proof that it was legitimate. Look, I rest my case by saying that no matter what happened after the fact, the Torah cannot be contradicted. So, to me, the fact that it's oral makes it less reliable, but if that makes it more reliable to you, fine. But the reality is that if the Gospels were written 20 to 100 years after the death of Jesus by people who wanted to create a religion about Jesus, Christianity, a religion about Christ, they're obviously going to elevate him to be the end-all, be-all of faith. So I see that as actually a opening for corruption there versus, again, the 5 books of Moses, which was written in real time in front of an entire nation by the man himself who wrote it. As I mentioned, Deuteronomy 31:24, Moses completed this Torah in writing before his death.
Okay. This is good. I'm really excited. I have a fully stocked panel backstage waiting to come on and chit chat with you. And some of them are new kind of ish here. So I'm excited. Are you ready to meet your panel?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Okay. All right. So I've got a fully loaded panel. Everybody's ready to go. Ash, apparently, Israel, do you know Ash?
Yeah, he knows me. We did a stream together a few weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good and fun. That's always good to know. Well,
Israel asked me to debate him a couple days ago, and I said no because I like him and I don't want to hurt his feelings. But
he's got your heart in the center here. And of course, Shaman Omar, welcome back, my friend. I will also send out credit where it's due. Mr. Omar made this connection between the rabbi and I to get him up for his first 1v the world tonight. So thank you so much, Omar. We appreciate you. Webby, welcome back, my friend. Hopefully your internet doesn't kick out on you like it normally does. Spin, welcome back, of course. Vibe, I expected you to be here, 110%. Morgan, I think this is your first time on screen. I think you tried to make it on the last panel, but didn't hit the cut on that one. And Clay, of course, I had full expectations of you being here. And of course, Andrew from Dragon Fist. I think you're dual streaming as well. And you've had your heart set on this since I pinned it up on the board. So you were excited. So we've got a full panel ready to go. Here's the rules for anyone who doesn't know my rules here. We're going to go a little round robin, one at a time. That means everybody else besides myself and Mr. Israel are going to mute their mics right now. And you're going to keep your mouth shut when it's not your turn, right? That's how it works. And you guys all know how I can get mean if you start interrupting and being rude and doing what I don't tell you to do. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Actually, Shaman, you were first back there, but it kicked out on you. So I wanted to hand it to you first, and then we'll go back and start with Clay after that, and we'll work our way around. So Shaman, Omar, what are your thoughts so far? What did you want to ask Israel? Tell Israel, commentary, whatever. You name it, go.
Actually, I don't want to steal Israel's thunder. I just wanted to be a part of this and watch this by faith bloodbath that I think is going to happen. And Ash, is good to see him. I've been trying to have a few words with him, but let's continue with. I respectfully pass to our Christian brothers on the panel and let them Let them go. Good to see
Let
you,
them
Rabbi Israel.
go diving in. Fair
Thank you,
enough.
Omar, for-
Fair enough,
for
Omar.
the connection. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, Clay, I'm going to hand it over to you. Go for it. Bring it
Very
on out.
cool. Yeah. So I'm actually going to probably with the question that you're or the statement that you're making, Jesus is not God. I actually side with you on that. I would colloquially be called a Christian. I don't call myself a Christian, but I believe that Christ is King. I believe that He is the necessary sacrifice that was made, that sort of thing. So I'm probably going to side with you more on any arguments against things. I may be a little backup for you, but obviously I'm not Jewish if I'm of the Christian faith and that sort of thing. But I do have a particular question for you because I did look at a couple of your videos and I was listening to you. I was wondering who you believe wrote the first 5 books, the Torah.
I believe it was Moses.
Okay. And then the follow-up would be, what about that last chapter in Deuteronomy?
After his death?
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It could have been him before his death, or it could have been other people. I don't think it makes much of a difference to the actual Torah itself, because there's no laws in that chapter. It's just simply a closeout. There's an interesting statement about someone burying Moses who was not a man, so that's an interesting point. It also says that even though the Israelites were waiting for their prophet like Moses, no one arose like Moses after he died. So that's pretty much the interesting points there, but pretty much it's a closeout on like the significance of Moses as a prophet and the fact that everyone in Israel witnessed the wonders that were done by God through the hand of Moses.
So it's a good chance that it was somebody else that wrote that, at least that last chapter. Maybe not the other ones, but definitely the last
There's a
chapter.
chance, but you have to consider the fact that if Moses is operating off of prophecy, he could have written that before he died.
I like that. I like where you're going with that, and that's the prophecy. So in reference to prophecy, that's actually why when you read the whole Bible in Christianity, why it leads me to believe that Jesus is that Messiah. So, but anyway, like I said, I'll probably side with you a lot more than going against you. I'm of the belief that in order to be Muslim, you must be Christian first. In order to be Christian, you must be Jewish first. In order to be Jewish, you must be from Melchizedek, the order of Melchizedek. I know some people pronounce that differently. I apologize to anybody who pronounces it differently. So on and so forth, all the way back to Adam. So appreciate you being here. I'll pass it off.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Before we move forward, Israel, I'm going to make an adjustment to your mic, and I want to turn you up louder, and hopefully that will work. Can I get just a test on that? Okay, that should be better. All right, Andrew, I'm going to hand it off to you, sir. Oh, you're muted, Andrew, on our side.
Got it. Okay. How's it going, Rabbi? Good to meet you here. My name's Andrew.
How are you? Nice to meet you.
How are you? Nice to meet you. So I do have a couple questions for you about your argument. The one that I saw particularly, because I was also streaming, so I didn't catch the whole thing, but I saw the short that Sarah posted. So I'm going to take this as like your basic premise. You could tell me if it's wrong. I'll repeat it back to you quick. Basically, you're saying that because in the Bible, it describes groups like the Nephilim as the son of God, and clearly they're not God. So therefore, that label of son of God doesn't apply to God himself. Also, you mentioned the Holy Spirit. This is just a spirit. So if it's God's spirit, there's no reason to like describe it as something else. It's God's spirit, right? There's no reason to put a different name on it, Holy Spirit, right? So this is like the basic part of the argument that I heard. Is that right so far?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit from the Catholic position why this is incorrect, because you are talking about Jesus, so I kind of have to take it from a Christian position. And as a Catholic, I'm very lucky to have the benefit of thinkers like Thomas Aquinas that I can lean back to. So if we look at what Thomas Aquinas says about God and why you're wrong about the nature of God from the Christian Catholic perspective.
Andrew, your mic is like bottoming out or something, like fish bowling.
How about now?
Perfect.
Okay, so from the Christian perspective, you're wrong about a few things in your premise. So your premise is wrong. You're wrong about the nature of God. Thomas Aquinas says God is not a being. God is being. So God is not something that's here on this earth. So when you look at the Spirit, which you describe as God's Spirit, but I'm assuming you know the Hebrew and maybe even the Greek, the word they use is pneuma in Greek. I know the Hebrew word as well. I'm not going to attempt to say it. I don't try to speak Hebrew, but you could probably, I know that both of these words, and you probably know this as well, have a context of more than just a spirit, especially in Greek. That's where we get like pneumatic power tools from this word. It means like blowing air on. It's something that's physically here. It's not just God's Spirit. So that's the separation between the Holy Spirit and God himself, who's not a being. He is being. This is the Catholic position, as per Thomas Aquinas. So then if you look at Jesus, there's no way to ever interact with God and see him in any type of human form except as Jesus. That's the only time it's ever been done. And you'll never see him otherwise from our position. So this is how you look upon him. This is when he took the human form and you look upon him. So there's actually no problem with using Nephilim or any of these things. And last category, I know this is where we're going around, is in quoting the Bible itself to make this determination. Because the Bible to us is not one book. It's a library of books, 66 books. So it's like you're going into a library, you're taking a book on poetry, and you're saying, oh, this bibliography over here isn't true. So your entire premise is wrong from the Christian position. So I'd just like to hear what you have to say about that, about the nature of God and the nature of the Bible, and why this doesn't disprove that Jesus is God.
Of course. So first of all, I actually like your statement from Aquinas that God is being itself. I don't disagree with that. In fact, I mentioned earlier that the name for God in the Bible, Yehovah, means God of the presence, God who is the presence of existence itself. So I actually think that saying that God is existence itself is synonymous with existence is not wrong, and actually makes a lot of sense, because nothing would exist without God, right? The fact that existence exists, if God is from the beginning, the first and the last, then by definition, existence has to be synonymous with God. So I agree with that. And I also agree that, as I mentioned from Exodus, when Moses was encountering God said, you cannot see my face and live. It's impossible for a human being to actually witness God face to face. So yes, God manifesting in the flesh would be a way for us to interact with him. As I mentioned in the Torah itself, God manifests in the flesh when he's meeting with Abraham, when he's wrestling with Jacob. So it's not foreign. There are angels and all these different beings. In fact, one of the terms to reference God is Yahweh of legions, the master of legions. So there are legions of beings in existence. The only point that I was making about the sons of God is that, generally speaking, when we look at the sons of God, we're looking at something that is begotten of the Father, something that comes after, right? And so it wouldn't make sense to worship the Son who is coming after the Father. That was the only point I was making.
Can I ask one follow-up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you had also mentioned that Moses himself, and I'm just trying to show that it doesn't, them being the sons of God and being called that doesn't negate the fact that Jesus also had a similar title. That's my point. But I want to go back to what you said about Moses. Your big point was that so many people witnessed it, right? So this was thousands of years ago, and you're still going to go on eyewitness testimony. I would ask what you think about modern Christian miracles, like Our Lady of Guadalupe, that was witnessed by all of Mexico. Mexico converted because of this one event. I don't know if you're familiar with it. An apparition of Mary appeared on a piece of cloth in front of people. And today, with people with technology, they've zoomed in on her eyes, and you could see the people that were standing there in front of her. Multiple people were there. That's why Mexico has that image of Mary everywhere. So if you take examples like that, witnessed by multiple people, and then you take examples like Padre Pio, who didn't live that long ago and had 50 years of blood coming out of his hands, no sepsis, interviewed by doctors. You can read their medical reports. They wrapped it and watched him under observation and said, there's no way this will still be bleeding. 7 days later, they unwrapped it, still bleeding. No scar tissue, no trauma. He dies. 10 minutes later, it heals up. And this is witnessed by multiple people. You can see it on video. It's on YouTube.
Andrew, half of the world's population bleeds for 1 week a month and continues to live.
Out of their hands for 50 years and never get an infection.
It's called a miracle of life.
Let Israel respond.
For 50 years bleeds out of his hand, never gets an infection. You can go online and read the doctor's report. It's medically impossible. Even if you ask ChatGPT, it will just say unexplained, because it's not going to say, oh, this is a miracle. So I asked the rabbi if witnessing miracles or witnessing things are the example. Most of these modern things that we witness have to do with Christianity, it seems to me.
Okay, so first of all, I definitely believe in miracles. I believe that God's power is above all and he can do anything. And I also believe that there are forces in existence that are spiritual that are not God. And that's by definition something that the Torah speaks of. There are other gods, there are other forces, there are forces, darker spirits you can harness for witchcraft and things like that. So the practice of a miracle itself does not prove truth. And something that makes me chuckle, because I grew up in rabbinic Judaism, and they have so many miracle stories. Like literally, this rabbi told the doctor that if you go into the brain and do this thing in the surgery, then it'll be fine, right? And like this, of course, this rabbi never had any education as a brain surgeon, so they're saying it as proof that the rabbis are divine and all these things. And look, I'm not here to undermine the fact that there are people who have divinity. Sometimes it's a positive form of divinity, sometimes it's a negative one. The only Torah source, again, that I can give you is Deuteronomy 13, where it says that if a prophet comes and performs a miracle and says to worship other gods, then you should not follow that. So, you know, the point is that if we're being called to foreign worship on the basis of miracles, that's not enough to change our belief. And to your point about Moses, well, again, the whole idea here of this faith is that it was airtight. Moses set the stage that, like, following his death and following the law being given, there was nothing that could change after that in terms of our perception of God and our perception of the law. And so if a miracle is being used, for example, like now what? Let's say that Mother Mary appeared to everyone. So now what? Should we start worshiping Mary? Because if we worshiped Mary, that would be against the Torah, right? It would be against when God says, do not worship anyone else. You know, the Jews, by the way, were worshiping the Queen of Heaven in the Old Testament, and they were exiled from the land for that. So, you know, we have to be careful with this stuff. I'm not denying that miracles exist. I believe we exist in a spiritual reality. That's abundantly clear to me. So the fact that spiritual things happen is par for the course. That's completely normal. The real question is, are we going to allow miracles to change the foundation of our faith, which was established even on the basis of miracles? That can't change it.
Okay. Ash, to you, sir.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
We can. Thank you.
I'm on my crappy headphones. I apologize. I'm sick if I sneeze in your ear, everyone. Yeah, so I was joking before. It wasn't about being mean to Israel that I didn't agree to debate him. I just think that the natural progression historically is to go from rabbinic Judaism to Karaite to Catholic anyway, so I don't see the point in it. But history has the proof. But so I think it's very brave of you to take this up as a open cross-examination without any formal debate, so that's pretty cool. I appreciate the bravery. I would ask this. Would you say that your issue with Christianity is that similarly to rabbinic Judaism, it does to an extent rely on oral traditions?
Yeah, I think it relies on oral traditions, and I think it contradicts the Torah.
Okay. When trying to determine facts about truth in a Mosaic covenant context, what are the criteria for presenting that evidence to the court?
Witnesses?
How many?
2 or 3.
2 or 3. Is there a time limit given on that testimony?
No.
And is it a written testimony or is it an oral testimony?
It seems to be oral.
Okay. In Christianity, is the referent of worship the God of Israel?
The referent?
The referent, the person who's being worshipped, who the claim is that they are referencing in their worship. Is it the God of Israel?
Yeah, I think I've been reading the New Testament. I'm almost done. You know, there is definitely like they say, God the Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. So I see like there's a split there. But yeah, they're definitely following in the pathway of the Old Testament. That's why they attached the New Testament to the Old Testament.
So mistaken as Christians might be, the referent is still the God of Israel in that worship.
Yeah, and I think that makes us fundamentally allies.
So
way,
Deuteronomy
way more
13
so
could not
than
be used to
others.
invalidate. So Deuteronomy 13 could not be used to invalidate Jesus as the Lord of God of Israel, because the referent is still the God of Israel. There's no false gods being chased after.
Sure, but if you're going to change the definitions on us of who the God of Israel is, then just like if I say that this cup on my table is the God of Israel, it doesn't mean we should start worshiping it. Like you have to. There's a criteria of how to define the God of Israel, and the God of Israel defines that for himself, saying, "I am."
So how do you define who the God of Israel is?
Well, I think he defines himself quite well. Exodus 3:15, I am Jehovah, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is my memorial for eternity. That should be the way that we reference him, and I don't see why we should start introducing another name or another figure, another character into this Godhead.
Right, but you still haven't determined how we as human beings can come to the decision that we are actually hearing from the God of Israel and not some other entity pretending to be the God of Israel.
Of course, but it has to be in line with what's established in the 5 books of Moses. The 5 books of Moses is establishing the faith of the God of Israel, saying this is the accurate representation of Yahweh passed from Adam through Noah, through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all the way through Moses and the Israelites and the covenant, the eternal covenant that was made then. What's being said there is that anything that comes after this, whether it be a deviation from the law or a distortion of the God that we worship, by definition, we have departed from the foundation of the faith. It's now a different faith. Maybe you can say that is the superior God, and he's greater than Yahweh, but I don't see how that's truly in line with Jehovah.
So I'd have to ask then, do you use for your 5 books of Moses the Masoretic text that was compiled in the 9th century, or do you use for example, LXX, the Septuagint that was compiled by the church?
I find them to be pretty much the same. Are there any significant differences?
There's some significant differences in some regards, but for example, Deuteronomy, I'd say 32, the host of heaven worshiping along with Israel, for example, is left out of the Masoretic.
But why is that so? How does that change my faith at all? Yeah, so the host of heaven.
Well, all it means is you're relying on either one tradition or the other to even know that you have the 5 books of Moses.
I mean, again, the differences are so minimal that you just said that it's the host of heaven worshiping with Israel. Okay, I accept that, of course. The host of heaven is worshiping with Israel. Now, will we have a different Torah now?
No, what I'm saying is that because there are textual variants, there are contradictions between the 2 traditions.
They're minimal. They're so minimal that, can you give me another example that undermines the Torah?
Well, it would be irrelevant at this point, but the point is, which tradition do you rely on for your 5 books of Moses?
I rely on the preserved writings of the Torah that are pretty much identical across all faiths and traditions and writings.
And so how do you know that those are in fact the Word of God?
Well, obviously there is a level of faith that goes into that. You can't know for certain, but God calls us to know, and I think there's knowledge that goes beyond scientific evidence and necessarily a personal and individual encounter with this. When you resonate with this faith and you read the words and you see that they're life-giving and the principles are true and they speak directly to your soul, and then when you read these commandments are not far away from you, not in the heaven, not across the sea, it's in your mouth and in your heart to understand it. And I know that it's in my mouth and in my heart, and I see the truth of these words and how they're eternal and how they help mankind throughout all of the ages, and that if we follow the Torah, we would be healed as a society and as a collective humanity and as individuals.
But you
and
still
families.
haven't told me by how I know that this is the Word of God. You haven't told me.
What do you mean by no?
I can trust.
So what do you mean by no?
I would say also, Ash, start to wrap it up so that we can let others too.
Okay, so yeah, so that's
like
basically
scientific
where I was
evidence. Scientific evidence.
Right. So if you're relying on essentially, so just to kind of put it at its final point here, if you're relying on the history that we have of eyewitness testimony to the miracles of the God of Israel at the Exodus, for example, wouldn't that same criteria apply to Jesus Christ?
Yeah, and I'm not even denying, like, if I'm not denying that God could raise Jesus Christ from the grave. That would be as easy as snapping his fingers. I mean, it says,
Jesus
by the way, in the New Testament,
from the grave.
Well, I mean, it says very many times that God rose Jesus Christ from the grave. I mean, I could pull up those sources.
One and the same.
Well, I mean, it's in the book of Acts. They say, God raised his son Jesus from the dead. So you can certainly read that as God is the one who raised Jesus.
Right, but the claim is he is Yahweh. So the point is you're using the New Testament's terminology about using the same term for the Father and for the Son and for the Holy Spirit as God to justify your own claim, which you're using the New Testament's theological claims.
Yeah, again, I'm not basing my faith on the New Testament. I'm basing my faith on the Torah. I'm saying that God could raise.
But you don't know what the
Jesus
Torah is
from
without the New
dead.
Testament or the rabbis, one or the other.
That's
You
not
have to
true.
choose which one.
That's not true because both the
Yeah, those
rabbis
are the
and
two
the
traditions that
Christians
give you a Torah
have-
and the eyewitness testimony to its
No,
miracle.
they don't give me the Torah. God gives me the Torah, and remarkably, two entirely different traditions who are
You
at
have no
odds
idea that
with
he
each
gave you the
other
Torah.
have been
You're relying
have
on
been
history
preserving.
of eyewitness testimony.
Let's put a pin in that one, Ash.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Thank you.
once everybody gets their thoughts out, then we'll move into full open panel, and everybody can
I'm gonna head
start
out because
chiming
I'm
in.
sick. But Israel, feel free to hit me up if you want to talk about it privately at any point. You got my number, so we can go.
Sure.
Okay, or publicly.
Or publicly.
Yeah, we could always set up a one-on-one debate. We do host those here too. All right, Spin wanted me to pass on him. Omar, I wanted to hand it back to you if you had a thought to add in here. If not, I'll move on to Vibe. You're muted, by the way. I hit your mute button for you.
Rookie mistake. No, I was just going to say right there when we're talking about witnesses and stuff, the only witnesses, again, is it possible Jesus resurrected? For sure, but the only person who said and declared that there were 500 witnesses was Paul, and Paul wasn't there, nor did he meet Jesus. So it's kind of like using one point to go against Rabbi Israel, perfect, but also that's the foundation of what you're saying too. So we have to be consistent with those perspectives.
Exactly. And again, by the way, Jews and Christians have been maintaining identical Torahs, even though they hate each other and are completely at odds with each other. And they base their entire religions off of the Torah. So by definition, that is the foundation of the faith. And that was accepted as history and the understanding of God for thousands of years.
Okay. Vibe. Yeah, he left. Vibe, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, sir.
Yeah. Hey, Israel, it's great to meet you. I am Christian, just to let you know. And I only had like 30 minutes to check you out prior. And I'm assuming you, because I know there's internet personalities, I'm assuming you're actually an Orthodox rabbi, not just like going by that on YouTube, right?
No, I'm not Orthodox. I just follow the Torah and teach it. So that would make me a rabbi.
Because a rabbi is a teacher, not a right. Yeah. So you're probably more informed and more intelligent about theology than I am. I am an ant. I am an idiot. I'm always trying to understand it as a Christian. But I do want to bring up the first point that I thought was a little bit interesting, is I kind of felt like the prompt is kind of a bait and switch. So you're Jewish, and we know, like in the United States, we come together as a Judeo-Christian country, even though we have this different belief. And ultimately, really, where I think you do believe that Jesus was not God, the real statement, the bait and switch, is you don't believe that Jesus is our Messiah. And I mean, in the Jewish faith, and correct me if I'm wrong, because like I said, I'm an idiot here. In the Jewish faith, you do believe there is going to be a Messiah. The Christians said, we count him as the Messiah. And you guys basically say, nope, he didn't, because our Messiah was supposed to be a king. He's supposed to bring peace. He was supposed to do all these things, right? Would that be a fair statement, or am I incorrect on understanding the theology differences between you and me?
Okay, so by the way, what you're saying is actually a good point, because if you were having a debate with an Orthodox Jew, it would be about the Messiah question. To me, because I'm following the Torah, nowhere in the Torah does it mention a Messiah. Nowhere in the Torah does it say, thou shalt wait for the Messiah to come to save you, right? In the Torah, it says you, yourself, you and your family need to return to God with your heart and soul. That is your key to redemption, to salvation, is your individual improvement as a human being. For me, the reason why I chose to go with Jesus is not God is because I'm much more preoccupied with the question of who is God than who is the Messiah. I don't think that the question of the Messiah is that central to our existence. It's definitely not the case in the Torah at all. And if we're counting the Torah as what is revealed to us, and that is what we need to be following, who God appoints as a future leader over the earth, or as a past leader who will return as a future leader, really is not important to me, because God ultimately reigns supreme over everyone. and God is the God of gods, the Lord of lords, the King of kings. So if we're following God, then we're following his Messiah too, whoever that may be or may not be. I just personally am not preoccupied with the Messiah question. I'm preoccupied with the God question.
And that's really interesting too, because we can actually look at this in the Torah and then the rest of the Jewish Bible, and then we can look at the New Testament and the testimonies, and then Paul's writings and letters afterwards, right? And they almost can be segmented in the same way, in the sense that, hey, we've got these original writings that you're saying are from Moses. We're saying, hey, we've got these original writings that are from the apostles that were there during this time. And then we've got this extra stuff afterwards, right? So I did hear you say many times focusing on the Torah, right? And it's perfect timing for me because I'm doing like my third iteration of the Bible. I'm on day 28 of Deuteronomy and chapter 28. So like a lot of the quotes you were saying, I've just went through.
Awesome.
But are you saying essentially, in your view, you are 100%, just like there are some Christians that just go, you know what, we're just going to go on the Testaments. We're not going to believe in Paul's word. Are you saying I go 100% on the Torah and everything else is just kind of allegory for the story of Judaism before?
Pretty much, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that the Torah sets that as the standard. That's why I'm saying this, not because it's my opinion, but because I think the Torah explicitly says, like, you cannot add or subtract to these commandments. What is revealed to you is revealed to you in this Torah. That God is one and he is Yahweh. End of story. So, the idea that people are going to come later on and tell you, well, you also have to believe the Messiah is going to come, and you also have to believe in the resurrection of the dead, and you also have to believe that God is three, and you also have to believe that the rabbis are the ones who tell you what to do, and that the church is the one who tells you. Well, it's like, no, that's not what I'm actually required to do according to the standard that God himself set in place. So because I'm following that standard, I'm not going to take any writing that comes after that, even if it's in the Old Testament, to override the requirements that are upon me from the Torah itself.
Oh, that's so interesting, because that totally changes like everything. Like I was taking tons of notes, assuming that you're like looking at the whole Old Testament. I didn't understand, and I did hear you say Torah, but I didn't actually equate that. I figured you were saying that's the base of the law. And I do have arguments for Christianity where we didn't actually change anything and we didn't add or subtract. But I do want to be able to pass it on to the next person. So maybe we can leave that for the open panel. But this is actually really interesting and a really fun debate, in that, in a sense, you're kind of refusing anything after the Torah.
Yeah. So long as so long as it contradicts it in any way or requires me to follow a commandment or faith claim outside of the Torah.
I mean, does anything in the Torah contradict a Messiah?
It just simply is not the focus. Like, there is no commandment in the Torah that says you shall wait for the Messiah to come. Like, that's just it's not mentioned, right? And so when you start to see that that's not even the goal of existence, to achieve messianism, the goal of existence is to achieve self-improvement. I mean, that's all the way, again, as we mentioned, Cain, the first man born on earth, improve himself. Like, this is about us and our personal lives and our families. And yeah, thank God for great leaders like Moses, like Joshua, like Samuel, like Jesus. Like, I have a lot of reverence for the character of Jesus. I just don't think that we should allow later writings and claims to override our foundational faith.
Okay,
perfect.
Morgan, welcome, my friend. To you, sir. You are muted. I don't know if you're aware of that, Morgan. Morgan, are you with us?
All right, I'll remember to.
Is he coming in for anyone else?
Thank you.
Choppy.
Morgan,
I can't see his mouth.
Yeah, Morgan, I think you got a. I think you got a lag.
Really
Morgan, turn your camera off and see if that.
Bush. Now, the children in Acadia, they're told. Okay.
Yeah, I think you got a lag. Turn your camera off. See if that helps. And then now try to go.
They would be told the I am is Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else picking up on?
It appears Israel has no Israel doesn't have a defense
Jesus.
for that one.
Morgan, I think you've got some a lot of lag going on your end. Why don't you go ahead and hop out and maybe try jumping back in and see if that works. Webby, you have the worst name known to man, considering your web always sucks. Oh, well, then he pops out too. All right, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and maneuver into open panel mode. Let me go ahead and bring up, I've got Balderson backstage. I've got Ant backstage. Thank God we have some people with good internet going on. Hold on. Let me try you one more time, Webby. I'm going to try you one more time. All right, Webby, go ahead, and we'll see from there.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Yes. Oh, mate, good work for doing this, by the way. This doesn't look easy, sat on that side of this interrogation. Mate, my biggest concern at this stage in time is how these things interact with reality at the moment. So let's say, for example, the West is Christian countries, let's say Israel, Judaist country, and then the Muslim countries. And how do those behaviors manifest in those countries? So, for example, the stuff that you've said, I actually quite agree with quite a bit of it. I'm trying to understand more of the difference between yourself and your beliefs between that and rabbinic Judaism. Do you still pray 3 times a day? Is there any differences there? Israel?
Did you hear him, Israel?
No, I don't hear anything.
Oh, you didn't hear him at all.
No.
Yeah, that's weird StreamYard glitch. You got to leave Webby and come back in.
Okay.
Or Israel does.
I heard him.
I think it's Israel.
Hold on. Everybody stop for a second. Israel, you can hear me, right?
I can hear you, and I heard Mr. Balderson.
Okay, I want you to go down to your audio settings for what you can hear, and I want you to change your audio settings to something else, and then change it back to your headphones.
So I'm actually going through an external. I'm going through an external vault. So I don't have. You want me to just change what I'm listening to and then go back to it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, change your speaker mode to something else. And while he's working on that, Morgan comes in with 5 months of a membership, says, "Thank you, Jesus is Lord." Thank you, Morgan. We appreciate you. Sometimes it's just when you have crappy internet, it doesn't work. And he also sends in the big 5 and says, "Thank you for hosting. You're most welcome, Morgan. You are most welcome." All right. Were you able to adjust it?
Almost.
Okay. And in the midst of that, Iotin sends the big 5 as a kind reminder that you owe your tomato tax. Don't forget you have a dono goal sitting up there, and you've got 14 minutes to hit it before I become an angry mater, and you don't want to see that happen. So feel free to change that. How about now, Israel? Are you set?
Not yet.
Okay.
He missed all the compliments that I was giving him too.
And also backstage, I do have Rock E. Shepherd hanging tight back there. I've got the psychic Dashton, our lovely stuffed animal friend. Mark hanging out backstage. I do need a quick cam up back there before I can add you to the roster. Just cam up, say hello. You can stay in avatar mode after that. Is it a full moon? We got a lot of tech issues tonight.
Yes.
I sound okay, correct?
Yeah, you sound fine for once.
New headset.
Yay.
So should not be an issue for a while.
It's usually me, so I sympathize.
That's okay.
Oh, did he hear me? He just smiled.
Did you hear Toasty? I just read Toasty's super chat. Did you hear Webby talk?
Yeah, I heard.
Oh,
okay.
Would you like me to start again?
Sounds like he
you
was
hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Nice. Yeah, I heard Webby.
Okay, so I'll just briefly go back.
I heard something about compliments. No.
Yes, there was some compliments in there, but they won't be coming out for a second time. So just take it as they were compliments. My question is, I worry how these things interact. So let's say if we gave the Western the term Christian world, and then we gave Muslims the Muslim world, and Israel Judaist world. Where I want to learn more is the sect that you believe versus the rabbinic. Is there many major differences? Like, do you still pray 3 times a day?
Oh yeah, there's major differences because you have to understand Judaism is very misunderstood by people. It's really not a religion of God anymore. I hate to say it's a religion of the rabbis. So, for example, the 3 times a day thing that you just mentioned, right? That's not a commandment in the Torah. It's not. The majority of things you're going to hear from the rabbis. I mentioned they have 5,000 laws between all of their Talmud and stuff. I don't follow any of that. So, again, doesn't mean that you're an evil person if you pray 3 times a day. It's just I don't believe that it's required. So therefore, I try to pray. I try to pray all the time, to be honest.
What I'm getting at is the behaviors, though. So does the Birkat Haminin, is that one of the prayers that you would recite daily?
No, so I don't recite any of their blessings. I don't like all the blessings are rabbinic. I had a rabbi try to come challenge my wife. My wife is not a Jew. She's Armenian, raised Christian. And so this rabbi who's been in yeshiva, which is rabbinical school for 10, 15 years, he comes to debate me, and my wife is with me. And he's like, so what blessing do you make on orange peels? and we're like, oh, you really stumped me there. You don't have to make any blessings on it and anything. Like that's not a Torah law. You don't have to sit here obsessing like which blessing to make, how many times to wash your hands. Like that's one of the things, again, I really like about Jesus when he challenges the Pharisees, like, oh, you're so worried about how many times to wash your hands. In the meantime, like your father's a devil. So like what's going on here, So I think that's a pretty good point.
You would probably agree with me that the Birkat Haminin shouldn't probably be recited in a Christian country when it's saying what it's saying, right, in English.
So here's what I'll say. I was raised Orthodox, so I know the blessing. I don't see it referencing Christians outright, so I can recite it for you actually right now. It says, "V'lamalshinim al tihi tikva." There shall be no hope for the slanderers, so people that like inform on us.
No. The real word. What's the real word? The heretics.
V'chol haminim and all the heretics. So yeah, I'm sure they would consider. I'm sure they would consider Christians heretics, but they don't say.
So it is talking about Christians then.
Well, it's talking about Jews too, so they would consider me a heretic too. So don't worry, we're friends. So no, they absolutely consider anyone who doesn't follow the rabbi's form of Judaism heretics. But the word is not Christian. So actually, the Hebrew word for Christian is notzrim. They're not calling out Christians straight out. They're just saying all people that we deem heretics, which yes would include Christians, but it would include Jews like myself too who don't follow the rabbis.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you agree. So my problem, I suppose, is the very title of this, Jesus is not God. If that was inverted, even in a Christian country, that in some of the Christian countries could lead to prosecution. Do you agree that double standard shouldn't apply?
Are you saying that if this was a Christian country and I said Jesus is not God, I would be persecuted?
No. If I was to do that against let's say the Jewish faith in a similar tone.
Oh, interesting. Like if you said that, I don't know, Yahweh is not God.
Don't say it just in case. But you kind of know where I'm going with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, are you referring to like what's going on with like the Jewish situation and the state of Israel and all that stuff?
Insert whichever Judaism figure instead of Jesus.
Yeah, look,
and
as I mentioned,
that out loud in some of the Christian countries could be prosecuted, right? Now, how you would be treated in Israel will be very different, way worse. But that's their country, right? Do we as Christians reserve the right to not allow this kind of word, or should we just open the playing field and everybody can say what they want, like freedom of speech is supposed to be?
Well, yeah, I think freedom of speech is very important. The Torah has complete freedom of speech, except for cursing your parents and cursing God. That's the only time you're not allowed to say something. So, but as far as speech goes, we should be able to say pretty much anything.
I think that's pretty fair. I think you've been pretty fair the whole time. I have my own thoughts on how we got to this mess that we're in Christian countries. And I think that men splitting into alphas, betas, and deltas has a big part to play in that. But that's a whole nother discussion. I'll pass from there. Sarah, thank you for your time.
Yeah, pleasure talking to you. I agree. I think that there's been a real imbalance with masculinity, femininity, men, women, and all this stuff. And again, the Bible really teaches us the right way with all these things. So, it's great.
I want to also add in Toasty Man Bad and Texas Bully Mom came in with their big tomato tax contributions to ensure that our goal was completed for the evening, or at least for this portion. So thank you so kindly. I'll now leave the floor open if anybody wants to kind of jump in and kick us off with a thought process. And of course, anybody is welcome to come and go as they please on the panel. Also backstage, I have Rock E. Shepherd, Mark Amponin, and Dashton hanging tight backstage. If you'd like to shake up the panel, you can boot anyone off of this panel except for Israel, and Omar is under protected immunity for the evening as well as a featured guest, since he made this happen anyways. But for measly $10, if somebody's annoying you or you don't like them, or maybe you just don't like the way they look, I don't care. $10, you can boot them. You can boot them backstage and
Now
bring somebody else up. Go ahead.
Now I know how it feels to be a Zionist in America.
Put real on the topic of exactly what the topic is, right? God or Jesus is not God. And during your one-on-one with Sarah, you were talking about how, well, God can't be man. But then later on, you did say, like, well, God can do anything. So I can't say that God can't be man. And so there was a little bit of contradiction there. And I wanted to take you into my world here for a second. And my world, and it's kind of the original question I asked you too, is basically you're denying, because it's not in the Torah, and because you're ignoring everything else of the Old Testament, that there is no call for a Messiah. But let's just say there is no call for a Messiah, but God does come. And I know there's a lot of gamers on YouTube, so let's just say God's up there, he gets himself a game console, and he puts himself on the planet Earth, and he starts navigating that as his avatar, right? So here he is, his avatar, Jesus, and he's saying, hey, I'm actually not reversing any of the rules of the Torah. I'm looking at the 10 Commandments, and I'm going to fulfill them. And as my avatar, I'm going to say that actually the number one goal is worship God first, which covers the first 4 commandments, and then worship people second, which is the next 6 commandments, right? He's not actually overturning it. He's not changing the 10 commandments. And even by him saying that he's sacrificing himself, he is also fulfilling the law of the Old Testament and the Torah. Actually, I'm going to stop saying Old Testament, because I know you're like, not Old Testament, you're Torah. Stop saying Old Testament. The Torah, right? He is now fulfilling the temple rituals, the sacrifices, and those things by being the new lamb, right? And I mean, if I could say to you, if you could concede, and I'm not actually saying I agree, I'm just saying if you could concede that God could be a human on earth, and I think you already did when you said, yeah, God can do anything. Could you not also concede that maybe he hasn't been adding or removing? He is just fulfilling what his original word was?
Yeah, of course. And I never said that God cannot manifest as a man. I just said that that man would not be the totality of God by definition, because God is beyond form and, our comprehension. So, yeah, again, I'm not denying the possibility that God did exactly what you said he did. I'm just saying that if we see then that as a result of that, we are, instead of worshiping the God that, took his game console and made a little human as himself, instead of worshiping that, we should just worship the one who sent him. And I mean, Jesus says as much, where he says, I'm not here on my own accord. I'm here by the one who sent me. And, I don't have power outside. Like, only the Father knows the last day. Only the Father knows this. So you do see a lot of that in the New Testament. Again, like, you also see aspects where there's worship of Jesus. So I'm not going to use the New Testament to prove anything, only to say that there is a lot in the New Testament to back up what you're saying. Ultimately, my only point is that it wouldn't make sense to worship the person of Jesus the same way it wouldn't make sense to worship the burning bush. If God manifests himself in a tangible way among us, we can be thankful for that. but also it doesn't mean that we should lose track of who the greater God is beyond all of these things, beyond everything that we can possibly see, feel, or comprehend.
And can you guys still hear me? Because I see I'm frozen.
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Okay,
Yeah,
so I'll just go.
we can hear you.
Oh.
I guess that didn't work for you, Vibe. If you can get back on, go ahead and jump back in on the link there. It'll happen. And Dashton, a Texas bully mom wanted you to choose to bring somebody up. I'm going to take that the drops as a go ahead to get you up here. I'm going to leave room for Vibe. There's Israel.
Really? So, yeah. So, what do y'all think about y'all? We're talking about Jesus is God. I think Jesus is the Son of God, of course. Like, he's our brother, but he's so more closer to God than anybody else, and he has the light of presence of heaven, and he can do so much light. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. I mean, I think it would be
So
undeniable.
when you call out to Jesus, it's powerful because he's so close to God, and his light is with Jesus more than anyone because he's so one with God, and he can be the human to connect us to God and his light, and he's the only way because he's done it. He's at that place where you call it to him, he can come. But he tells me, he said, I'm here to save Selena, which was my girlfriend. And one other day he said, tell her to set me in her heart, which was my friend who's a Sagittarius Virgo rising, moon in Aries. So those are the words that Jesus said to me when I encountered him. And he's really pretty. And he has that's alive, and it feels like jelly. And inside is all his colorful of light and energy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in and of itself explains the problem.
It's like a love
like,
child. It changed my voice when I was in the presence of Jesus. I could never make myself feel like that.
Hang tight, Dashton. He was trying to respond to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just saying. I think that in and of itself, you're revealing the problem. Here. Like, oh, Jesus is. I'm saying, like, I think in it. Can you hear me?
Dashton, I think you have a delay, darling. I'm going to tuck you backstage. Go ahead and jump out and then jump back in if you can. All right. Next in line, I had Rock E up. But
Sarah,
I'll let you guys.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me? If I could just respond to that for a second, because I think that statement of it, so like, oh, Jesus is so pretty, like what the hell does that mean exactly? Like, okay, so you worship your God because he's pretty. Like, this has to be beyond your little feelings here. Like, oh, moon Aries. Also, how does that make it into this conversation? Right. The reality is that we worship a God who is beyond all these things. We don't worship forms. We don't worship constellations. We don't worship stars. We don't worship Mother Nature. We don't worship Mother Mary. God is calling us to a worship that's way beyond our little feelings. And that's an important point that the Torah calls us to over and over again.
And before anybody else jumps in, I want to let you know the gauntlet is officially open. Please, if you are over on the Raging Tomatoes side and you'd like to continue watching Open Panel, we are moving over to the Gauntlet. That is at the Gauntlet Debate on YouTube, at the Gauntlet Debate. Otherwise, I'm shutting down the Raging Tomatoes side on YouTube only now. But yeah, that's where you can go to continue on with us. Everybody here stays placed. Don't move.